If you told me at the start of the 2024 season, Mercedes would have 2 victories with its W15, I would think that you were crazy. The car didn't start off in the right position and was a good margin behind Ferrari and Red Bull. It's now made up almost half a second on both Red Bull and Ferrari since the beginning of the year, with an upgrade plan that I find to be very weird in comparison to the other competitors. The top teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren all have a set upgrade plan, while Mercedes has done different stuff, but it's gotten them in a great position with parts coming and a mysterious suspension solution that's being called as a cooling upgrade that definitely has heads turning after we saw it first introduced in the Austrian GP and now another victory in Silverstone. But right before getting into it, I wanted to thank you guys for the support on the channel. The love you guys give me is insane, and thank you so much for that. It's only going to get bigger and better, so please subscribe if you are new here. It really helps the channel out. But let's get into the Mercedes W15 video. The hype around the team is obviously big after 2 victories in a row. But what's made Mercedes' upgrade plan so effective from the start of the season? In Bahrain pre-testing, we saw 2 different things. We saw a floor design that came in the pre-test, and we also saw a suspension solution that was interesting to any other team. They had 2 different revisions on the suspension. They were able to switch through it through the testing days. In testing days 1 and 2, we saw the suspension setup without the huge anti-dive. But then on day 3, we saw the anti-dive setup, which proved to be the wrong way to go, and why they tested these 2 suspensions in the beginning of the year. This can still be seen on the car where they had that suspension solution, where they were able to change where that wishbone is set up in the car to give them more anti-dive or less of it. But since Bahrain, we've not seen that changed. In Australia, they used that Bahrain pre-testing floor and tested it on both cars again to see if this would give them more performance, but that proved to be wrong as well. So in Miami, their first upgrade came, which was a floor design, and since then the team has been on an upward trajectory, and the car really doesn't have too many weaknesses anymore, with the exception of a little bit of slow speed understeer. This upgrade plan that started from Miami, now ranging all the way to Silverstone, has introduced small parts. We haven't seen anything big on the car, no crazy revisions to it. We did see a front wing that's being talked about as magical, but Toto Wolff states otherwise. The overall balance of the car is completely different to what it was in the beginning of the season. It had a very unstable rear end in the start, but now the car has a better overall base to go off of, which allows them to lower the car at a super low ride height. This was something they were trying to achieve from the beginning of the 2022 season. It proved to be unsuccessful in 22 and in 23, but now finally in 24, this team is finally being able to show off its progress with the return of James Allison, who's been a huge help in regaining the team's confidence from the engineering department. But what the Austrian GP brought and what the Silverstone GP confirmed to us was this interesting and mysterious suspension / cooling hump that we see now on the front nose of the car. Now, this new bulge on the front nose of the car was suspected to be for cooling, but it proved otherwise when we saw it in Silverstone, because obviously we had the rain and there wasn't any cooling required. In Austria, this made sense. It was a very hot race weekend, and in the beginning in preseason testing in Bahrain, we saw teams trialing this out, and it was now mandated on all the cars to have this if it needed to be used because of what happened in the 2023 Qatar GP when it was so hot and drivers were claiming to almost be fainting in their cockpits. This was never going to add much aerodynamic gain, but it was going to help the drivers in the cockpit gain some cool air in a more efficient way than just from the front of the nose, but now a bigger cooling grate. In Silverstone, they kept this closed, and in Austria, it was closed as well. So now this gives us the talking point of this mysterious layout on the car. So nothing is confirmed, and it probably won't be because this is under the car. It's not something that we can actually visually see unless they show off what's under this bulge, which we might possibly see at some point, maybe even possibly in Hungary when the front nose is off. But what we can go off of is go back to 2016, where they did have a similar solution like this, and what it ended up doing in 2016 was, it was a change on the front suspension that they brought that heavily revised the heave damper, and they needed the space with this bulge to be able to add these mechanical parts. It was widely known that in 2016, that Mercedes car had the best front and rear suspension. It was known across the paddock that this car was technically perfect, especially in the suspension kinematics. Move on now to 2024, we see this bulge. We see that the car is now able to lower itself more than any other car on the grid, and it's very much helped them through race pace and qualifying pace in any condition now. What we can assume is that this is now helping the aerodynamic platform of the car in the base of the W15. Something that's been missing from the 2022 season is a stable platform that gives you a solid rear end and enough front grip to be able to turn in the car. As I said, its only real weakness is that slow speed cornering, but even that's been improved from the beginning of the season. Toto Wolff has talked about the updates that have came to the car, these small revisions, as something that's given them a lot of balance. It's not just that the front wing with its flexing has given them that magical downforce. It's more of that now everything is working on the car, and with their ride height being so low, they're able to use everything from the car. Raising the ride height even by a millimeter can cause a loss of downforce, and Mercedes has lost so much downforce throughout this regulation period because of having to raise the ride height due to porpoising or the car's balance just being all over the place. But now they're finally in a place where they can actually add effective upgrades that are correlating to their wind tunnel. This has been a big issue for them in this regulation period, that correlation between wind tunnel to circuit has been all over the place, and some tracks they do amazing, other tracks they fall out in Q1 or Q2. But the team has announced bigger packages rather than the small revisions coming to Hungary and Spa. And out of the two GPs, Hungary will definitely have the bigger part of this package, while I do think Spa will be the additions that didn't end up coming to Hungary. As I stated before, the team has had a weird upgrade plan, but now they can back up their data in the wind tunnel and actually go for some more pace. They're probably about a tenth or two behind on Red Bull. It's been stated by Toto, it's been stated by Lewis. Silverstone seemed to be that great track. Hungary does have your slow speed corners, especially on that rear rotation, which has been talked about to give them some understeer. But hopefully these updates address that, and maybe we can even see possibly a back-to-back for Lewis, who's always been very dominant in both Silverstone and the Hungaroring, which are back-to-back races, and I think he's looking forward to racing in two of his best GPs. George has been on it since the beginning of the season. I expect him to do very well here as well, and I do think these upgrades are very crucial to the team. In this mysterious secret suspension, I'm interested to find out even more about it as the season goes on. It's clear they have a great aerodynamic platform, and I think it's clear now they probably are the second or third fastest car, pretty much in unison with Red Bull, fighting the McLaren, which I think is the fastest car, and it's only going to make this 2024 season even more fun. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below about this solution that is either cooling or a secret suspension setup. With this obviously being up in the air, I'd love to hear your theories on the suspension, because it's always great to talk about it and I love reading about it. So thank you so much for support on the channel. Please leave a like and subscribe. It'd mean the world, and peace.